Welcome back to the library studio here as part of the Yahowah vlog. I'm your host, Winn. We're going to continue our story on returning to the garden. And you might think, well, didn't we already finish the testimony regarding the garden when we did previous programs? Now we're in the midst of Numbers 5, and the story of the garden is told in Genesis 2 and 3. And indeed, that would be correct, except that the conclusion of the story regarding the garden actually talks about whether or not we return by way of ash or we return to dust. And so God is bringing our attention to what happens as a result of Numbers 5, where Israel is viewed as religiously corrupt. And Dowd, who is the groom of Numbers 5, wants his bride back, and he wants her unsullied so that she is no longer corrupted by having too much indulgence into false religion. So this is how we are going to determine whether or not souls in the end are returned to the dust of the earth, just ceasing to exist, or if they are purged by the ash of the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, and therefore get to go on and witness Dowd's return, the great homecoming and family reunion, and then have the opportunity to re-enter the Garden of Eden. So what we're reading now is the story of what will determine whether or not your soul is allowed to return to the garden. So it certainly seems as if it would be more than appropriate for us to continue our series on returning to the garden in this discussion. Now, by way of recap, we have recently come to deduce insights that have never previously been considered. An entirely different and more accurate way to evaluate what transpired in the Garden of Eden, why man was taken away from the garden, why there were 6,000 years between the time we were removed from the garden and the time we will be given the opportunity to return, when that will occur, and why it will occur. I think that this actually sets up one of the most profoundly important understanding of our purpose in the creation of the universe, why we're here. Since that's one of the great questions that mankind has probed for as long as we can plumb the depths of human understanding through writing, which dates back to just about 6,000 years ago when this all transpired. I believe that, think might be a better term, I think that I've unraveled the very question, found the answer as to why we were conceived, how the story of what occurred in Adam explains why we were conceived, where we failed, where we went wrong, and when and why and how we will have the opportunity to make it right again. You see, what I've discovered is that Gan Eden, this protective and enclosed, sheltered garden, conducive to life, while a real place and something that likely occurred as we have read it in the opening book of the Towrah, it is actually a microcosm for our planet, Earth. Earth is a very finely tuned, highly protective and sheltered environment that's conducive to life. Could well be the only one in the universe. And what God is saying is that he created life in general and man specifically with a Nesama, the one thing that makes mankind different than the rest of the animals that all have a nephesh soul, is that with a Nesama, we can think, we can deduce, right and wrong. We are enabled to determine what is productive and counterproductive, good and bad. Nesama is essentially our conscience, where our nefesh, soul, is our consciousness. Consciousness simply gives an animal the ability to observe their environment and respond to it. A conscience enables us to think it through and make decisions about what we have witnessed that can lead us to things that are profoundly beneficial or destructive. It is the thing that brings us to God. And we are using it here to explain what happened. So Eden is a microcosm of planet Earth. And all of the big hype that the world's richest man, on paper anyway, has for going to Mars. We need to be a multi-planetary being or species, or life is over for us. And he's full of it. The fact is that Earth is conducive to life. Mars, the moon, Venus, any planet or moon within our reach is deadly, toxic. This planet is uniquely tuned for life, and nowhere else within our grasp is. And so Yahowah then brought man with a Nesama conscience into this protective enclosure to tell us a story. And that story is that he wanted humankind to be observant. And you might say, why? What would be the purpose? I mean, the moment he has a nefesh soul, he is automatically observant. It will have eyes to see, ears to hear, touch, smell. He can know what's happening around him. So why would God say specifically that man was conceived to be observant? Because there's so much to see. So much more to see than trees and streams and other animals and the like. Yahowah would have testimony that would go back to this time that he wanted us to closely examine and carefully consider. And that's just the beginning of it, because the whole purpose is to calibrate a human such that we earn God's trust, so that he can do as he most wants, which is to take us on journeys of exploration throughout the known 2 trillion galaxies in our universe. It's likely many more than that. And the hundreds of billions of solar systems within each of those 2 trillion or more galaxies, even through the essence of what is now called dark energy and dark matter, so we can understand and see and explore it as well. He wants to show it off. He created something extraordinary, magnificent, and he wants to show it off, and he wants somebody to enjoy it with him. That's why we were conceived. And so Adam was specifically created to be observant, so that he could be a good explorer when released from the garden and now released from this planet. But alas, Adam didn't measure up. Second, Yahowah wanted Adam to engage, to work, to make a contribution. He did not want to engage in a relationship with Adam such that Adam was a dependent. He's not looking for entitlements and to offer entitlements. No, God does not see his entitlements as a productive thing, but instead counterproductive. He wants the relationship to be mutually beneficial. He wants all parties to it to make a contribution. This was specified of Adam, and Adam failed entirely. There is no indication that Adam did anything in the garden. He was a deadbeat. In fact, the terminology strongly suggests that he was lazy. And that's not what God's looking for. He's looking for people who are not only observant, good explorers, but those who will make a contribution along the way, who will make the experience richer for everyone. God expects us to listen. Adam didn't do that very well either. And he certainly didn't respond appropriately to God's instructions. And Yahowah wants someone he can trust. For us to be taken off this planet and into the fullness of the fourth, then into the fifth, sixth, and ultimately seventh dimensions, we have to be enriched and empowered and liberated beyond our imagination, with each increase in dimensionality being an infinite increase in possibilities and opportunities, and choices, things to navigate and understand. And God simply can't do that in a universe filled with nuclear furnaces and black holes and exploding nebula and all manner of things, particularly with time being a dimension. Because if we were to go back in time and mess things up, it could be catastrophic. And so God needs to know that if he gives us instructions, as he did Adam, that we will pay attention and we can be trusted to do as he has instructed, which Adam was not. So what God realized is that man in a sheltered and protective environment had no opportunity to grow. There was no way for Adam to ever prove himself. To develop character, to develop resolve, to demonstrate that you have the wherewithal and can be relied upon to get up once you've fallen, to admit a mistake, correct it, and move on wiser and better for it, is something that is not possible in a protective and sheltered environment. That's why with overly protective parents, children don't develop and grow. We have to be allowed to fall. We have to be allowed to make mistakes. And we have to have a parent who is willing to tell us, this is the right choice, this is the wrong choice. If you make this choice, this is the things that will happen for you. If you make this one, then, it's going to be harsh for you. But allow us to make those mistakes and then grow from them. That couldn't be achieved in the sheltered garden. There was no way for Adam to ever develop the character such that God could trust him, and there was no way for him to ever become interesting enough for God to say, let's go explore the universe. They were having trouble just exploring the garden. So it was God that ended the relationship. I don't think anyone, in fact, I'm certain no one has ascertained that, but it's quite obvious from the verb that God chose when he announced to Adam that it's not good for man to be alone. The moment he said that, he had already made the decision that he was going to distance himself from Adam and therefore the garden. So God made the decision to withdraw. And then he told Adam, and us, that it's not good for man to be alone. So he created woman for the benefit of man. So he wouldn't be alone when God left him. And then when it is stated in English translations that God caused the man to fall asleep, it's not caused. That verb isn't a fall. It means that God caused the fall of man. And he explains why he did so. We had to be escorted out of the garden so that we could prove our worth by being devoted, by being steadfast, by working, by listening, by learning, by growing, by engaging, by contributing, by showing that we were worth the investment in time and we could be depended upon by God. We had 6,000 years to make that journey from falling to standing. And during that time, 99.99999% of humanity has stayed in a fallen state, religious in particular. but also the overtly political and the militant. And it's not, however, universal. Noah was the first example of hope. He listened to God. He did as God had asked. He saved himself and 8 others aboard that ark, also keeping the life that God so treasured and loved in that region alive. And the ark of the flood is a wonderful example of someone doing what Adam had failed to achieve. And we also see the likes of Dowd as the greatest exemplar of all. Dowd was a man who stumbled often, who made many mistakes, but always learned from them, corrected his mistake, and moved on. Richer, stronger, better, wiser for the experience. A man who was absolutely committed to being God's co-worker, to engaging with him. And so there are now examples of people who have done this. Now, we learned other things in the garden. For example, that the most important character in the garden isn't actually Adam, nor is it Chawah. It's the tree of knowledge. And what we learn is that that tree of knowledge is actually a person, as is the tree of lives. The tree of lives is Dowd. He's the greater luminary of Genesis 1. He is the one who opened Passover's door, opening the doorway to life by fulfilling Pesach in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE. And the tree of knowledge is the one who wrote the books on how to get us back from a fallen state, from Azab, back to life, based upon what Father and Son have achieved through fulfilling the spring Moedim in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE, in Dowd's second of 3 lives. It's a lot to process, but that is the story that God's telling. And now that we are just 7.5 years away from being invited back into the garden, it's important that you know how you are going to get there, how you go about being included, and those who are invited in and who will be excluded. I have in a book, perhaps this is it, yes, called Zerah, Time of Trouble. This is 825 pages. It itemizes every event that's going to transpire of any significance between now and the time that we're invited back into the garden. And sets dates, times, place, identifies the people involved. It's the future history, if you will. Tomorrow's newspaper given to you today. It's free at yahowah.com, as are all the 35 books that I have written by translating the Dead Sea Scrolls into English, the lingua franca of the world, the language spoken by more Jews than any other. And in so doing, we have deduced many thousands of previously unheralded insights. That book is full of them. So it is our opportunity now to introduce you to the opportunity of returning to Gan Eden. The doors will be open on October 7th in 2033. It'll be 5 days after Yahowah and the Matsah and Melech, son of God, Dowd, return on Yom Kippurim, October 2nd of 2033. And that's 10 days after the Adamah Parah, this bull whose ashes mixed with water will purge the adulterous woman that is religious Israel of her guilt, so that this mortal remnant of Israel is not guilty anymore, is ready, able, prepared to witness Yahweh's return with Dowd, and then to re-enter the garden. That is God's story, and that's the context of what we're discussing here. Now, as this continues and we read of a priest, you need to know that since there are no more people, there's no longer anyone identified effectively as a Cohen or a Lowy, the priest that he's talking about here is the last witness, a man who's coming back who will act in that role. He is the one who will officiate. His name is ElYah. His name means Yahweh is God. He will have been brought back for this express purpose because first he's trained in it. He led a dress rehearsal for this very event 2,888 years before he will reprise his role in the preparation of a bull surrounded by water that Yahowah ignites the flame while expunging religion and politics from the people. Exact same thing that's going to happen on Towrah happened 2,888 years ago. The second reason that it is ElYah who is going to perform the role of master of ceremonies, serving as the priest, is God likes his style. God's sarcastic. He likes sarcasm. And who wouldn't need a good laugh after all we have gone through and will endure? So the one acting in the role of priest will have her swear an oath and make a solemn promise, earnestly to affirm the truth regarding herself at this moment in time. She is indicative of Yisrael. Now, I know that Yisrael is a masculine name, but the fact is that God is using the metaphor of an adulterous woman to describe the religious infidelity of Israel. The introduction to this discussion in Numbers, Bamidbar 5, makes that very clear. And it's Hosea that also is the one who Yahweh uses to make this clear. Yisrael was divorced through Hosea for religious infidelity. And that's why Yahweh, before issuing the letter of divorce to Israel through Hosea, approximately 2,700 years ago, had Hosea marry a religious whore. Because the religious whore is symbolic of Israel. So it is the same story here. She is the religious whore that God divorced 2,700 years ago. So the one acting the role of priest, ElYah, will have her religious, and this is, I should be very careful here. The overtly religious, those running around as rabbis, those making influencer videos for social media promoting Judaism or Kabbalah, same thing really. Those in their black suits, whether it's ultra-Orthodox in America or the Haredim in Israel. 0 of them will be included in this. This is not going to purge them. The worst of them will be sent off to Sheowl. The best of them, which are still horrible people, will have their souls extinguished at this time. This does not include anyone who is overtly political. If you are active in your political party on behalf of Likud or any other Israeli party, blue and white, you name it, you're not going to be included. You will be expressly excluded. If you're a Christian, you will be expressly excluded. If you are Muslim, you will be absolutely excluded. If you're an anti-Semite, excluded. Conspiratorialist, excluded. The only people, a part of the mortal remnant that will benefit from this test provided in Numbers 5 of what's called the adulterous woman, are those who have the stench and stigma of religion and politics by omission rather than commission. This is actually explained in quite some detail with the bull providing remission for omission versus commission in Numbers 15. And in this regard, if you have been misled, but Yahowah detects something in you that says there's a possibility that you could perform well if allowed to return to Eden, he will allow you to take this test. If he and his Ruach decide otherwise, you'll either be sent into Sheowl for being aggressively religious, or your soul will dissipate into nothingness. So that's who we're talking about here, is Israelites who are still singed with the stench of religion and politics, but are not overtly promoting them, either of them. So the one acting as the priest will have her swear an oath to make a solemn promise to affirm the truth regarding herself at this moment in time. He will say to the woman, if a person has not hung around with you, and if you have not gone astray, turning away that which is filthy and defiled under your individual person, then, well, you're released. You're pardoned. You're innocent. You're free. Free from what? Free from what? Free from what? What is the single worst episode in the history of the children of Israel? It's the waters of Meribah. That's what Hamar represent. Min, Mayim, the waters, from the waters, Hamar, of vexing and provoking bitterness. Most Jews in particular parade around with their Towrah as if this was a great book vindicating Jews. Somehow this is something that makes Jews important and empowers them, speaks well of them, extols them. Not the truth, not even remotely. The Towrah condemns Jews overwhelmingly, unabashedly. Now, the first book of the Towrah, Bereshith, doesn't even speak of Jews. There is no Jew in the book of Bereshith until, well, you turn to the very, very last pages of it, and you have Jacob with Leah give birth to Yahud, and he would be the first. But he's Yahud, not Jew. Jew is a corruption in the 17th century of Yahud. Yahud means beloved of Yah. But prior to that, the entire rest of the book is not about Jews, not even about Israel. Israel wouldn't exist until just pages before that, just a few years really before the birth of Yahud, as Jacob is renamed. But these characters are all Babylonian. They're all Goyim. And by the time the story turns to Yisrael and the children of Yisrael, at that point, we go from having a mix of good and bad. You know, Abraham and Sarah, good and bad, mostly bad, but some good. Noah, really all good. But for the most part, it's good and bad. Adam, some bad and some bad. Chowrah, mostly bad. So we go from the potential for good and bad to by the time we get to Israel, it's horrible. I mean, the Jacob did some really dunderhead things, said some dunderhead things. He's not a really good, very good guy. You know, God affirmed the covenant with him because, well, he was that guy. But wow, I mean, he even gets the blessing because his mother lied, deceived his father. And the birthright is taken away from Esau. And because Esau married Canaanite women when his parents didn't like that very much. But from the time that the children of Israel are born, it's all downhill. And they start off by hoodwinking some people in the community to get circumcised, not because they wanted them to participate in the covenant, because they wanted to rob them. And when they were pained from the circumcision, they attacked them. That's pretty low. That's a low blow, as they say. And, we have the first children of Israel selling their brother Joseph into slavery. And it's just bad. And when you see them in Mitzrayim, they don't show any initiative to come back home when the weather patterns improve. And then when they are enslaved by Egypt and there's huge numbers of them, you don't see any fight in them. No resolve to say, we got to solve this problem. And then when Moshe is born during a genocidal phase, Moshe actually acts to do the right thing. He is the glimmer of hope. He stands up against Mitzrayim, but the children of Israel, rather than thank him for risking his life to spare them, turn on him and threaten to turn him in. It's just horrible. Moshe leaves town and shows that he has some character, but when he comes back and he tells Yahowah, the last thing I want to do is go back there. He had some keen memory of them. He didn't like the Mitzri, the Egyptians. He thought that their caste system was abhorrent, that their Pharaoh is a god concept was abhorrent. He didn't like it, and he repudiated it. He didn't want to be any part of it, and he didn't like the Hebrews either because they were so malcontent. Nonetheless, God has him go back, convinces him they should do this, and the next 40 years are horrid. Jews are miserable. When you're holding up your Torah and saying, wow, this is the story of our liberation from Egypt and the story of us being the chosen people and of our Hashem doing, great things for us and bringing us into the promised land. It is horrible. You are reprehensible. And you don't even get to the point of the golden calf before you're screwing stuff up. You get to Nuweiba Beach and you're begging to go back to Mitzrayim and be slaves. You didn't handle the crossing well at all. And you get to Towrah and you build a golden calf. And from that moment on, you never stopped being religious. It was just shortly thereafter that you told Yahowah to shut up and go away, that you never wanted to see him or hear from him again. So when you're holding up your Torah and you're kissing it, be kissing your sweet ass goodbye. It renounces you because you were renounceable. You were deplorable. You want to call Moshe the great rabbi, but here's the truth. He wasn't a rabbi, and he hated you. He told Yahowah that you were so reprehensible, so embittered, so obnoxious, that rather than having to spend another day with you, he wanted God to kill him. So this is the truth. And as bad as all of that was, and it continues to pile up and get worse and worse and worse, the most horrid blow of all is the water of Meribah. And so what God is saying here is that by the waters that are being released from the Temple Mount underneath the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah and the tent of the restoring testimony to be reestablished there once the Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque are purged off of the mount, that will release you from this great stigma of the waters of Meribah. I'm going to remove your vexing and provoking bitterness, this curse of harmful consequences that you brought upon yourselves. Right there in Bamidbar, Numbers, in the heart of the Torah. This story is told in Numbers 20, right after the story of the Adamah Parah, Numbers 19, by the way. So you should have been able to make the connection between these things. And that's what's being purged. That, my friends, is why when Yahowah was speaking with Moshe, and Moshe ran to God for the umpteenth time and say, yeah, the people are just belligerent. They want to kill me. They want to stone me. They want to go back to Mitzrayim. They're just miserable. And God says, here's the solution. I want you to speak to the rocky crag. And it will release its waters. It'll wash away this problem. But Moshe didn't speak to it. He struck it. He struck the crag. That's God's message here, is that the crag is talkative. He'll listen. I am the crag. My name is Craig. It's Celtic for crag. It's rocky precipice. And well, you can strike me and I'll still do my job. And that's the purpose of the Adamah Parah. It will be stricken and beaten to a pulp on Towrah. And under it, the rock of the Temple Mount is going to release copious amounts of water, purging Israel of her guilt and the guilt of the waters of Meribah. And this time you will be allowed into the promised land for your guilt. That is the story that God is telling here. That is the harmful curse that is being remitted. It is the vexing and provoking bitterness of Israel that is finally being washed away. This is Numbers 5:19 in the heart of the Towrah. This is similar, as I have shared with you, of the presentation in Hosea, where Israel is equated to a religious prostitute, prompting God to divorce Israel. And just as is the case in Hosea, this is something which must be resolved prior to Yahowah returning with Dowd for the family reunion to occur. Yahowah is very clear in Hosea and throughout the Torah as well. You must shub for me to shub. Shub for shub, or no shub for you. You must return to God before God's going to return to you. He is currently divorced of you. And he's divorced of you because of your continued propensity to be religious. It is the rabbis in Judaism that keep you estranged. That is the vexing waters of Meribah. So therefore, in this prophetic statement, Israel is being asked to come clean and then renew her wedding vows, becoming trustworthy after a long time of proving otherwise, and then engaging in a productive way. But since she is not far removed from the horrid examples of Chawah, of Miriam, and of Michal, a cleanup is required. But in this case, Yahowah is proposing an innovative solution, one that has been in place for many thousands of years. He said, by contrast, branded and stigmatized as a sign of ownership by another. Satan, religion. You have gone astray. Beneath and oppressed by your man. So indeed, you're polluted, you're unclean, you're filthy. A person is being offered to you as a gift, with him having, or will have it, laid down his life for you, such that you separate and choose to part, disassociating yourself from your prior choice of men. Numbers 5:20. When you read Numbers 19, you know who that individual is. He's the Adamah Parah. And the Adamah Parah is not a red heifer. He's a man. And that man, who is also known as Obed-Edom and the man from Edom, he is referred to as Ha-Nakri, the most observant foreigner, and of the choder of the stem from the fallen tree stump that was once Israel. This man is the one who, as a bull, a par, who has become productive, parah, and as a man, Adam, who is bloody red of the earth, Adamah, will make this sacrifice voluntarily for you. And it's that sacrifice that will purge you of your guilt at this time. He will have laid down his life to separate and disassociate the whore of Israel from her choice of religious whores, so that you're no longer branded or stigmatized, so that you're no longer owned by the rabbis in Judaism or by Christianity or Islam. A man is offering his bashar body, his life, as a gift for you. And that man is not actually one of you. Horrors of horrors. Not only do you have to acknowledge that the rabbis have been the greatest enemy of Israel for the last 2,000 years, and the very thing that has kept Jews estranged from God is Judaism. But the solution is a goy who is willing to lay down his life such that your religious guilt is purged. It's beautiful in a way, because where Jews went wrong, and it is still to this day, you didn't listen to God when he said, do not accept the ways of the Goyim, which he was very adroit in explaining. Don't be religious, don't be political. And what did you become? Religious and political. There is no people on earth that are more juxtaposed to their religion than Jews. Judaism and being Jewish are considered coterminous in most people's thinking, even in many Jewish mindsets. The integration of religion and politics and ethnicity is greater among Jews than any other people on earth. It's the very thing God said don't do. He said that the integration and commingling of religion and politics is Babel, and that you should walk away from it, and yet you went right back to it. And so, with that being the horrible example of the Goyim that you brought into Israel to destroy Israel, it is now a Goy who has disowned religion and politics, who is going to purge you of religion and politics. God's very, very clever. Much smarter than the rabbis, I will assure you. Religion is stigmatizing. For Jews, there is none worse than Judaism. And we say, oh no, compare Judaism to what Muslims are doing. Without Judaism, there are no Muslims. The fact is, and you need to deal with this, Israel, the only reason that Islam exists today is because in Yathrib, rabbis sold Muhammad Talmud readings, which he then used to make his Quran seem credible and religious. Without them, there is no Quran. There is no Islam. Rabbis made a buck selling Muhammad recitals from their Talmud, which Muhammad credited to Allah to complete the Quran, and make the Quran seem like it was an Abrahamic religion. And then when they mocked him, as rabbis have a want to do, when he didn't pay them, and when he claimed that it was Allah who gave him the Talmud story recitals, Muhammad was a psychopath. He did what all psychopaths would do. The rabbis weren't smart enough to figure this out. He turned on the Jews and perpetrated genocide. 30,000 Jews lost their lives in Arabia. Maybe you've heard of Kabar Yahud. Yeah, that's what happened. And you can't even distance Christianity, which oppressed Jews, subjugated them, created the environment for the pogroms, and worse, the Holocaust. You can't separate Christianity from Judaism either. Paul was the first to call himself a rabbi. He was taught by Jewish religious scholars to cherry pick the Torah and prophets, to twist what God said, and to promote a human agenda. Without that training, the New Testament doesn't exist. It's Paul that created the myth of Jesus. It was the Jewish religious community at the time that allowed him to get away with it, because they did not acknowledge that Dowd had arrived at exactly the moment he said to do precisely what he had promised to do, which was to fulfill Pesach by being crucified, and then to carry our guilt away on Matsah, and then as the firstborn of Yah, to fulfill firstborn children on Bikuwrym. Because they didn't pay attention to the many hundreds of prophecies pertaining to this, Paul's lies took root and grew. It's Jews are to blame. And then you have the father of rabbinic Judaism. What did he do? That's Akiba. He promoted a false Messiah of his own to counter the false Messiah of Paul. Bar Kokhba, you should know him. That's where you get your six-pointed star. Son of a star is his name. He brought the wrath of Rome on Israel. He caused hundreds of thousands of Jews to be crucified. His 35,000 acolytes all died, and this guy was such a bastard, he blamed them for their deaths. And he's the reason that the land was renamed Philistia, which will be the reason that there will be a Palestinian state. And that's the father of Judaism. Yeah. Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It's all because you made the wrong choice in men, Israel. You've chosen to listen to the religious and not to God. I listened to a rabbi, this ugly piece of crap with the unkept beard, little beanie cap. He was lecturing on how the menorah that is shown on the Ark of Titus, that was taken from Israel during the time that the Romans came in to destroy the Second Temple, how that was wrong. And he knows it's historically wrong because Maimonides draws it with little feet at the bottom of it. Little feet at the bottom of it. And since Maimonides is the father of Judaism, also that Maimonides is historically correct, and the fact that Maimonides lived in the 12th century, we won't bother with any of that. The fact that Maimonides grew up in an Islamic culture and served Muslims, we won't talk about that. The fact that Maimonides' 13 principles of Judaism are all wrong, we won't talk about that. The fact that Maimonides' timeline is 197 years off, and we haven't figured that, we won't talk about that. The fact that Maimonides didn't know Yahweh's name or anything that was intelligent. No, the fact that he has a drawing that has three little footsies for the menorah, oh, that's the historically correct one in the 12th century CE, not the one described in the Towrah in the 15th century BCE, or the one depicted in stone in the 1st century CE. That's how obnoxious these people are. And yet you listen to them. You pay their salaries, Israel. You bribe them. Why? Yeah. Judaism is a sign that your soul is owned and controlled by another. God-forsaken rabbis. And in this case, since most women are controlled by the wrong men, and in Judaism, it's just like in Christianity and in Islam, women have very few rights. They are stigmatized by them and told to disassociate from them. You want to end a religion? Have the women stop being religious. Of course, it's funny in a way. The very goy that Israel will want to dismiss for being a filthy Gentile will be the most effective means ever of cleaning them. Sort of like an astringent, I guess, huh? The Adamah Parah, this fruitful man of the ground, will be horizontal at this time, having laid down his life so that Israel may live. I will fall so that you may stand. I have stood so that you may rise. It continues. The one acting in the role of priest will have the woman swear an oath and make a solemn promise to earnestly affirm her trustworthiness at this time, by way of Shabuwah, the promise of 7, for the curse, even for the hindrance of Allah. The one acting in the role of priest, ElYah, should say to the woman, Yahowah wants to offer the gift for you regarding the curse and regarding Shabuwah, the promise of 7 in the midst of your people. Yahowah is offering to give, with ongoing implications, your procreative power back, such that you will be able to give birth and your womb will swell. Bob Midbar, Numbers 5:21. Man, is there a lot to unpack here. And there isn't a rabbi on the planet that can explain any of this. First of all, they buried the whole concept of priest. You're celebrating the last days of Hanukkah, which in my view, in Yahweh's view, is far worse than the golden calf. Golden calf, you took a religious idol from Egypt, the Apis the bull cult of the pharaohs, and you made a god for yourselves during the Exodus. But with the menorah, that is 9 candles that you attribute to this uprising of the Maccabees, you've done something far worse. You've taken God's primary symbol and you've twisted and perverted it for your goddamn religions. Yeah, Hanukkah's far worse than the golden calf of the Exodus. And you know what God did with the people who built the gold calf? They had the earth swallow them, dust to dust, shall we say. But you don't recognize that the Maccabees, what they wanted to do was to do away with the Lowy Cohen, such that they would replace them because they thought they were better, because they were greedier. I know it's all draped now, and they opposed Greece, and Antipater was bad, and the Greeks were bad, and they were pagans, no doubt, and Jews didn't much like being controlled and oppressed, but the fight was, you should read this story because it's hideous. The fight was over who would control the priesthood, with rabbis ultimately being men who were chosen by men as opposed to a ethnicity set aside by God. So you don't know that. And so you have no clue who the priests are because you got no concept of it today because they've been replaced by men claiming to be great. Rabbi means I'm great. So the one acting in the role of priest, not rabbi, will have the woman swear an oath, make a promise to affirm her trustworthiness at this time by way of Shabuwah. You Can't figure this out either if you're religious. You've got no concept of what Shabuwah is. Shabuwah is the next harvest. It is a barley harvest, which means that the beneficiaries will all have capitalized upon what David did when in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, he fulfilled Passover, Matsah, and Bikuwrym. And there is no Bikuwrym without Pesach and Matsah, and you don't know what Dowd did to fulfill Pesach and Matsah, or that his body served as the Passover lamb and that his soul carried our guilt into Sheowl on Matsah so that we could enjoy Bikuwrym, and therefore those who capitalize on what Father and Son accomplished 2,000 years ago will be those who were affirmed on Shabuwah. But it's more than that. One of the reasons that there is this Shabuwah harvest isn't just to keep God's chosen, those who have availed themselves of the terms and conditions of the covenant and who have made great contributions to serving Israel, Yahowah, and Dowd by conveying this message. It's not just that he wants to keep us out of the time of trouble. We're resilient. I'm not going anywhere in terms of backing down. I don't care what you do or what you say. I'm carrying on. I'm devoted to this. I'm in it to right to the bitter end. Or more importantly, after the bitter end, to happily ever after. But God has a different way of going about it. He is taking harvesting, literally so their souls disappear from the earth. Those who have figured it out, those who have come to recognize that religion is wrong, that politics is unreliable, and that to be in a relationship with Yahowah, we must disassociate from those things. Trust and rely on Yahowah instead. Walk to him along the path of the Moed Mikre, particularly Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym, as Dowd fulfilled them in 33 CE. And then engage with Yahowah, doing as he once done, being the anti-Adam. Listening, observing, thinking, responding, engaging, stumbling on occasion, but then getting right back up, showing that we're determined, steadfast, dependable. Those are the people that are harvested on Shabuwah. Why are they back now? Because it is those people who aid in the process of Towrah. They're the ones who work with the Adamah Parah, Yada, the Choder, the Nakri, throughout the next 1,000 years to make Israel right. It's not that they are just here assisting ElYah during the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on Towrah. Those who were brought into Shamayim on Shabuwah will be engaged throughout that 10 days between Towrah and Bikuwrym to prepare this remnant to receive Dowd and Yahowah. And then we'll be working beside the tree of knowledge on behalf of the tree of lives for the next 1,000 years to prepare this remnant of Israel to earn Yahowah's trust and to be allowed off this planet, explore the universe. It's the people of Shabuwah that are the ones who are engaged at this time, removing this curse. It's the middle stem of the 7 in the proper menorah. So the one acting in the role of priest should say to the woman, Yahowah, well, now we're already at our 3rd full stop. That means that until we have a remnant who have distanced themselves from Judaism, we can't get this done. And that is the reason why this is happening, the time of trouble. Because until Jews hit rock bottom, when they realize the IDF is no more valuable than they were on 10/7, which is useless, that their politicians are as they were on October 7th, which is useless, counterproductive, and that the rabbis are every bit as valuable to them as they were on October 7th, which is worse than useless. And they realize that there's only one alternative. They finally have to come back to Yahowah or they're dead. And they will say, oh, well, maybe we give Yahowah a chance. They have to go through this horrid time before they're willing to accept what Yahowah's offering. And it is only when they reject the rabbis, Judaism, the culture of being Jewish, that they will do what Jews you have an anathema against, saying Yahowah's name. Such a simple thing, and yet you won't do it. And between now and the time that you accept and revere Yahowah's name and proclaim it proudly, wield it appropriately, you have no hope. You need to fall to the point that you recognize just how wrong the rabbis in Judaism have been in erasing Yahowah's name. Until you repudiate the rabbis in Judaism, you aren't going to embrace Yahowah. And so the woman can't say Yahowah anything until such time as she has fallen to the point that she rejects Judaism. So the Torah is talking about a time when rabbis in Judaism are no more, that they're repudiated. Because this woman should say, Yahowah wants to offer the gift. And it's for you. Regarding the curse and regarding Shabuwah, the promise of 7, the man whose body will be struck as the rocky crag on the top of Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount, on Towrah, for the benefit of Yisrael, to purge the guilt of religiosity and politics. He is Mr. Shabuwah. He is called the Zerah, which is the one harvesting and cultivating this ingathering. He's the first to ascertain what it represents, when it will transpire, who will be in attendance. And without him determining the proper pronunciation of Yahowah's name, and that Dowd is the Messiah and Son of God, our Savior and returning King, who fulfilled Pesach, Matsah, and Bikuwrym, making Shabuwah possible, there would have been no Shabuwah. And so he's the one that told you everything you need to know about Shabuwah, and this, the 9th volume of Yahowah, one of 35 books, free at yahowah.com. I would advise you to read it so that you know why you're being asked to speak Yahowah's name, to acknowledge that the gift that has been offered to you regarding ending the curse because of what has been done by the man who is fulfilling Shabuwah, doing so in the midst of your people, because he will be doing this for you and for Yisrael. So we're reminded again, Yahowah is offering to give with ongoing implications. It's a gift. And for all of these 6,000 years, Yisrael has been experiencing religious miscarriages, political miscarriages. Mitzrayim, the Egyptians began to perpetrate genocide in Egypt at the time that Moshe was born. And the Assyrians attempted genocide after the Egyptians, as did the Babylonians. And Certainly the Muslims have. The Marxists known as Nazis have. The world is calling for genocide of Jews today. Your creative power has been reduced, Israel. And we're offering to make you productive again. The barren woman will conceive. And what this means is that during this return to Gan Eden, as you are invited back into the garden to prove that you have what it takes to impress God, to earn God's trust, to show him that you'll never go back to religion. That during this period, you're going to conceive and have children. You know, so long as we get, it's 1,000 years time, we get a handful of men and a handful of women into the garden on Shabuwah, we will have plenty of candidates to teach and train and lead during that 1,000-year celebration of Sukkah and our return to the garden. Now, I think there'll be thousands. And based upon what we have learned and the team of people that we will have working, and the fact that you're going to have Dowd there and Yahowah's presence, we're going to get this done. We're going to be un-Wookiee-like looking at my fur-faced friend that is napping through the show at the moment. We're going to get it done. And God's going to be pleased with the result. I think he already is. I think he's seen the result. Your womb is going to swell. So by mentioning Shabuwah, Yahowah is drawing his people's attention to the Zerah, to the Parah, to the fruitful one, as he is presented and discussed in the great prophet and in the great Isaiah scroll. He is the one cultivating these harvests. He's also reminding them that because they missed out, they were left to endure the curse of Allah. You're going to experience, Israel, Al-Aqsa flood 2.0. It's going to be 1,000 times worse than what occurred on October 7th of 23. Going to be 7 years of terror and torment at the hands of sadistic and demonic Muslims driven by deceitful Marxists. The time of Israel's troubles is Islam's final opportunity to slander, abuse, plunder, abduct, and kill Jews. And they're very good at being bad. And Jews are very bad at figuring out that the problem is Islam, not Hamas. Israel is convinced it's fighting a seven-front war when it only has one enemy, Islam. And they're doing nothing to target that enemy. Satan's musings on the matter, of course, can be found in Ezekiel, where he brags about raping Jewish girls and about his 25 hideous ways to kill Jewish men. Should you seek evidence of this, I would encourage you to read the Babel series of Yahowah, again, free at Yahowah.com. And should you want to understand the murderous nature of Islam, please consider Goddamn Religion, 5 volumes, 4,200 pages that are irrefutable in their condemnation of Allah, Muhammad, and the first Muslims, Islam today. Yahowah's parting statement is typically mistranslated. I say this because it opens with God wanting to offer Yisrael a gift, something to salve the wounds that have been inflicted by raging anti-Semitism and aggravated by Allah's jihadists. So in this case, as a result of the Adamah Parah sacrifice, the barren woman that has been Yisrael, the nation of stillborn children, too corrupted by religion to survive, will be given birth. They will be productive again, producing healthy offspring. And since they will repopulate the garden, the gift of swelling wombs means a return to childbearing during the 1,000-year celebration of Sukkah, camping out in the restored Eden. After all, what's the point in Dowd coming back as king of forevermore if only to hassle with a single generation of recently cleansed religious and political malcontents. A few will become many. And if we begin with many, they will become many more. This is the point. The narrative of the Adamah Parah serving as the Towrah sacrifice for the mortal remnant of Israel 7.5 years from now, and just days prior to King Dowd's homecoming, is becoming ever more obvious. This is why the water mixed with ash of the sacrifice of the ash of the Adamah Parah, when God ignites the flame beneath his body, will occur as the same moment that the subterranean spring that Yahowah has properly positioned under the Temple Mount will release its cleansing waters, and then God will ignite the purging fire. It will all happen under the body of the Bashar, body of the Par bull. They will work in harmony to restore the remnant of Israel prior to Dowd's return, so that our king can accept his bride. That's why we read, and the waters of the curse will enter and exit through her bowels to enlarge the womb. The procreative power of the woman will give birth. And the woman, she will say, Amen, Amen. I accept this affirmation as reliable and true, as I become trustworthy and acceptable. Numbers 5:22. Then the one acting in the role of priest will write that which pertains to the curse in the record, documenting it, and then he will blot it out, wiping it away and destroying it, along with the waters of the disagreeable bitterness and poisonous toxicity. 5:23. And he should have that which pertains to this woman, drink the waters of disagreeable bitterness and poisonous toxicity of the curse, and it will come and go with her, these waters that bring the consequence of the curse of pungent and disagreeable bitterness. So the one acting in the role of priest will obtain and accept from the woman's hand that which is apportioned as the sacrificial gift for the exclusivity in this relationship. And then he will waive the voluntary sacrificial offering appointed as a gift before the appearance of Yahowah, and approach with it and with her to the very place of the sacrifice. Bamidbar 5:25. This cascade of flowing waters is going to emerge from under the Temple Mount and beneath the altar with the burnt sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. His body will be placed at the opening of the tent of the restoring witness, which will be over where the dome of the rock once stood. It will be toward the east, facing towards the east, and therefore towards the Mount of Olives. The waters will flow off the Temple Mount as the flames light the skies and the smoke billows towards the heavens. And the result will be to purge the religiosity of Israel, causing the nation to be productive and useful again. That is the whole purpose of us returning to the garden, is it not? To be a people destined for participating in the covenant. It will serve as a glorious affirmation that God's people have been restored and that they can be dependable, faithful, and reliable in a relationship at long last. The bitterness gone. At this moment, the religious guilt of those gathered in Jerusalem will be purged. The toxicity of the past will be washed away, the bitterness removed. Towrah's beneficiaries will be prepared to witness Dowd's return. Our king with God, Yahowah, on Kippurim, and then attend the wedding. Finally entering Gan Eden on Sukkah, 5 days thereafter. The final sacrificial gift will have been offered and redeemed. The relationship is going to be restored. The Moedim will be fulfilled just as the Torah prescribes. It is the bull who is being sacrificed. It is his body that is being burned. It is the goat who is officiating as the priest. And the ram, he is awaiting as the groom for his bride to arrive. And he, of course, is the most memorable of men. The cast are comprised of Yada the bull, ElYah the goat, and Dowd as the ram. And this will be a most glorious moment in time. The Torah reads, the one acting in the role of priest, ElYah, should grasp a handful from that which is apportioned as the sacrificial gift of the burnt offering of the most memorable of men on her behalf, and send the sacrifice up in smoke at the place of the sacrifice. Thereafter, in the end, he should have the woman drink the water. When he has had her drink the water, it will be on the condition that she has caused herself to be sullied and that she acted unfaithfully and unreliably against her man and had entered into her the waters pursuant to the consequence of this curse of toxic bitterness. But then she will have swelling in her womb from her procreative power to give birth. The woman's time, that woman's time will end, along with those who remain cursed in the midst of the people. So there will be fire, there will be water, there'll be smoke, there'll be ash. This is to say that as a result of the voluntary sacrifice of the bull, the expert officiating of the goat, and the return of the ram, all of this is between Yisrael and Yahowah, and it will bring it all to an end. There will be those purged, there will be those who fail the test. This is the ultimate result that God has sought. We've reached the end of time as we know it, and the start of time as we will enjoy it. The resulting family union will then be exceedingly satisfying. The infidelity of religiosity will finally be washed away. Souls purified by the water, the fire, and the ash. The curse of toxic bitterness that had reached its zenith at Meribah during the Exodus will be abated. Long barren and since being unable to bring a child into the covenant, the curse will finally be lifted. Israel will no longer be barren, pursuant to the Bereth. She will be given access to the tree of lives as her Messiah returns, and they are betrothed. And if the woman is no longer sullied, if she is not defiled or polluted, then she will be cleansed and restored. She'll be purified and renewed. She will be pardoned and seen as innocent, and she will conceive, cultivating the harvest by producing offspring. Bamidbar 5:28. It is as I have shared. Now, there is an if here, because success is actually not assured. Some of those who will be collected during Towrah in what's called the white and then the dappled chariots, based upon their lack of religious or political opposition to Yahowah, to Dowd and Yisrael, will still lack the character and the traits needed to pass this test and return to the garden. Those who pass muster will be purged of their prior guilt and given a fresh start on life. So this speaks of the role of the Adamah Parah in making that determination and pardoning the mortal remnant of Yisrael prior to the fulfillment of Bikuwrym and Sukkah. But he is offering to restore those who are guilty by omission, not commission, and that's what this test will determine. Restored, God's people will be given the opportunity to be productive again. This will be the antithesis of what was experienced with Adam. And in this regard, Zerah speaks of conceiving, cultivating, and collecting the children who will enter and complete the covenant. It is the fruit of the Zerah, of Moshe, of Dowd and Yada. It is the very fruition of the Towrah. And that is why we read, this is the Towrah guidance and teaching for jealousy and for exclusivity in the relationship. When a woman has gone astray and has turned away beneath and oppressed by her man, as she trashes herself, making herself filthy and polluted. Bamidbar 5:29. Israel became very, very good at aggravating Yahowah and has remained that way for the last 34 centuries. Well, Yahowah composed his Towrah. They were cheating on the relationship with replacement gods. So this is the solution, God's guidance on returning home after having wandered away for 3,500 years. It's time to come clean. It's now or never. The Adamah Parah awaits. King Dowd is the man who is zealous for his bride. He is, however, not going to share her with a rival. He either gains her undivided attention, putting religion and politics aside, or, this is what we read. And for the man, Winn, for the benefit of the relationship, he crosses over to the other side for this with a zealous spirit, seeking exclusivity in the relationship. And he becomes now passionately zealous, desiring the undivided attention of his wife. Then he should be present with the woman, standing before the appearance of Yahowah, along with the one acting in the role of priest. And he should engage at that time, carrying out for her everything that is in accordance with the Towrah, with its directions and guidance on this. Bamidbar 5:30. And so the individual will be without guilt, no religious or political corruption remaining. And the woman, her propensity to bend and twist the message, which, by the way, goes all the way back to Yahowah, will have been forgiven. Her guilt will be removed. And so ends the Towrah of Bamidbar in the wilderness of Numbers 5:31. Dowd's going to cross over from the spiritual realm of the heavens into the material realm of the earth on Yom Kippurim, expecting to meet his bride, beautifully blushing in the warmth of his light, exuberant and excited over his anticipated arrival. He has pined passionately for her return, doing so for millennia. And finally, even Yahowah will have her undivided and unwavering attention. But you'll notice she'll be standing. She's not bowed. even before God and King. And that is why they have long desired for this to take place, with the fallen rising again, recovering from the garden to walk back into the garden. I expect, I hope, to serve as best man to my friend and my king. And I anticipate that ElYah will officiate the ceremony with Yahowah, walking the bride down the aisle, and it will all be in accord with the Towrah. Immediately thereafter, the gates of Eden will swing open, and we will all proceed into the garden, celebrating our God's patience and persistence with us, giving us the second chance at romance. In this reading, we learn that when Yahowah caused the fall of man and our exclusion from the garden, he had a plan already in place that would allow us to grow up, to come clean, and to demonstrate that we could be trusted at long last. Yes, only a few people have taken advantage of this second opportunity, but I can assure you, more will soon follow, and I hope that you are included among them. Good day from the library studio of the Yahowah blog.
I'm going to play your song.
Please. I now understand that we have the opportunity for a wonderful song that my wife has written for this occasion. Please listen and enjoy.
Children of Israel, hear my voice. I called you by name. I gave you a choice, a plan to lift you on wings so high, to walk in my light beneath endless sky. I gave you guidance, loving and true, a father's heart reaching out to you, but echoes of silence answered my plea. You turned from the truth and chose to be free to stray, and that you are. Rejected us both, a family torn, a love unreturned, one last chance, one last dance, for those of you that still discern the path less traveled. Yet it shows the way our voice grows cold in the night, sway our lament, our unanswered call. Me, yet you chase whispers that only fall. I gave you a covenant, a golden word, but voices of falsehood drowned what you heard. Still, hope remains for hearts that break, for those who turn, for love's The sign of Zion marks the ground in the place where I put my name. Children of Israel, I know this is true. No greater love than I have for you. Though broken hearts and paths astray I'll wait for you to come home.